Okay, in part one of the videos for April 22nd, I covered hands-on practices, including the assignment hands-on practice for number 8. So here in this video, we'll be covering the Path of Light Yoga web case study. And in the first task, they say create a new folder for this Path of Light Yoga Studio case study. As we've seen in the past, we don't follow that first step. Instead, create a folder called CIS112 last name chapter 14 yoga. Download the beginning files attached to this homework link and place them in that folder. And please follow the format of the naming of the folders, because it makes it easier when I'm grading to figure out what assignment I'm grading. Then once you've downloaded the beginning files, which are here in chapter 14 web case study, complete task 2 and the rest of the tasks. So in task 2, it says add the date last modified to the footer section of the schedule page. Launch a text editor and open the schedule.html file. You will add the date that the document was last modified to the bottom of the schedule.html page. You have the option to complete this task with JavaScript or to complete this task with jQuery. So what I'm providing here in this video is both options. I would prefer that you provide that you would demonstrate that you have learned something from this by reiterating in this assignment options 1 and option 2, but it's not required. I need to see at least one of the options, but it would be good practice for you to do both. Let's put it this way. If I see both, I will add up to 15 points extra credit for seeing both options used in this Path of Light Yoga Studio. Okay, and again, that is 15 points extra credit for using both options. So let's start off with option 1. Using JavaScript, modify the page as follows. In the page footer section, after the email link, add a div element containing a script block that will write the following message to the document. This page was last modified on, and then date. Use the document.lastModified property to print the date, save, test. Okay, so if you refer to the book on that, you'll see that they okay, so using the JavaScript version of it, the coding for that is just as they say, go to the footer and put a div in there. In this case, I put div ID equals content, and then I used an H3. This document was last modified on, and then the script, which is document.write, open parentheses, document.lastModified, close parentheses, semicolon, and then, of course, your closing script, closing H3, closing div. And that is all you need for the schedule.html using JavaScript. Very simple. If we go ahead and run that, you'll see the document was last modified on April 22nd at 12:43 p.m. Okay. Okay, so that's option 1, using JavaScript. Option 2, using JavaScript and jQuery. Modify the page as follows. In the footer area, after the email link, code a div element. Add a script tag in the head section to access a jQuery CDN. Code a jQuery script block that includes the ready event and uses the HTML method to display the message. Page last modified on, etc. Save the schedule, test it. Okay. Now on this one, if we look at the code for schedule.html, we see that the first thing that we have to do is we have to put a script tag in the head section to access a jQuery CDN. So we have to put the src equals https : / and so on, that link that we saw earlier in the book. This has to be in the head section in order for your web page to access a jQuery CDN. Then it had said to put a div, code a jQuery script block, well, in the footer area after the email link, code a div element. So here I do a div ID equals version, / div to end that. And we next have to do a jQuery script block that includes the ready event and uses the HTML method to display the message this page was last modified on. So if you go back up to your head section, what you should have is your document ready function, and then the function showing the footer div .html, and then this page was last modified on. Okay, and that results in showing her this page was last modified on underneath the email address in your footer. Now, this portion here, there's a number of ways you can actually do it. I'm providing you one. You're welcome to try other ways of doing the function down in the footer. But that would be the option 2 for doing schedule, showing this page was last modified on using jQuery. Task 3 states, add form data validation to the contact page. Launch a text editor, open the contact.html file, configure form data validation to the contact page that requires an email address to be entered. So using JavaScript, that's option 1. Oh, and again, regarding that extra credit, it has to be both tasks done using both options to get the full extra credit. So you can't just do task 2 using option 2. You need to show me that you were able to follow this example or do on your own both options in both tasks. So in task 3, the first option, again using JavaScript, add a script block to the head section as follows. They give you the script add. Okay. And they also demonstrate how to edit the form tag. So going to code on that for option 1, contact.html. we first go to the head section and add a script block to the head section as follows. Added that. Function validate form, etc. And then the second part of that was to edit the form tag. Form method equals post action such and such web devbasics.net. We're replacing that with form method post action equals and on submit equals return validate form. So you can see in my comments what used to be there, and then what we replaced it with. After you've done that, you need to remove the HTML5 required attributes, remove the asterisk from the name and comments labels, verify that the input text box that accepts the visitor's email address has a name attribute with the value of my email, and then they give you the sample code for that. The first thing I had to do was I commented out required information is marked with an asterisk. Then I went to each of the labels and that had an asterisk and removed the asterisk for them, and also for the those labels that were initially had required, I removed the required in there. And then made each of the labels similar to below. Similar to this code they have here, where they're giving email as an example. So each of these labels name, email, comments. Coded as I'm showing you in the my own example here. Okay. And then once you've coded all of that in, save the file and load it in a browser. Test it by clicking the submit button without typing in the email input box. Alert box should pop up and the form should not be submitted. So you can see here that I've really only focused on the changes, but I'll scroll through the entire code for contact.html so you can see that that's the only changes there. Again, this is option 1 using JavaScript. This is contact.html. You can see the section where we changed the form method equals post. Made some modifications to HTML5. Made modifications to the labels. And we'll go ahead and run this. And if I go ahead and submit now, it's going to say enter an email address. Now, the email address was the only one we specified as required in our... So let's go ahead and start typing in there. Let's say E, and then send. And it says, please include an @ in the email address. So I'll put an @ in there and not put anything else, and then send. And now it says put a part following the @ So at eee.com, and now you'll see that it's submitted properly. So again, it's only the email that we've set for validation in this web case study. many times that's the only thing that uh, a web page might require definitely be entered. And I see one thing I misread here was it was only remove the asterisk from the name and comments label. So I'm actually going to change a couple of things in here. One, I misread that to see that it says remove from all. It just says remove the asterisk from the name and comments. So we'll put the asterisk back for email. And also required information is marked and come back in, since we are actually using an asterisk now. And I'm going to save that and run it once more. And now you can see the change that I made there. Still the same error pops up if, so we'll put down first@last.com, and that'll accept that. All right. Then we'll take a look at option 2, which is using JavaScript and jQuery. Add a script tag in the head section to access a jQuery CDN, and of course the script tag to access the jQuery validate. Let's take a look at that in Contact. So in the head section, and I made a tinyurl.com, so you have both versions, one with my tinyurl.com version, and in the schedule.html option 2 you see the full version, so either one will work. And then the jQuery validate plugin script needs to be added. And you can refer to hands-on practice 14.13 to read more about the validate plugin and also get some hands-on practice. Then says edit the CSS to configure styles for error messages generated by the plugin. That's yoga.css. And you'll see here that I've got in my style here, label.error, so that I've coded it according to what they're asking for. Configure a label.error selector, set float to none, and all of the other specifics. That's all coded in here, just as they are requesting. And edit the HTML after that. So I'm going to save that yoga.css there and go back to my contact.html, and I actually have to do a couple of modifications there because just like in the other one I misread about the asterisk thing. So I'm going to put the asterisk back with email. And put the required information is marked with an asterisk. Back in. No, actually that is already in there, so no problem there. All right, We did the CSS, we did the edit HTML. And it says add class equals required email to the input tag for the email text box. So see that's in there. And we'll run that. And we'll just put down first and then try sending that. It says please enter a valid email address. That's a little different than the error message. The other one was in kind of like a box format. Here we have in red. So a valid email address, we'll try using first at. It still says valid email address, so last.com. And that one will take. All right, so that's your web case study. You've got the two options, again, extra credit if you do both options for both task 2 and task 3. Okay. And week 16 is going to be primarily for review. I'll assist you in tying in your previous lessons to your final project. I'm not going to give any specifics like coding or anything like that for the final project. That's the purpose of this final project, is to take together all of what you have covered this semester and see if that can help you in building a web page, this ramen noodle web page. So we'll take a look at that on our next meeting. Actually, our next meeting is Wednesday, so Wednesday we'll start doing that and continue on next week with more of the same.